Good evening and welcome to Face the Nation. It's the 30th of January 2017. We're coming to you live and direct from our Stein Studio Complex here in Ratmalana. Now, it's been a little over 2 years since the government of good governance came into power. But we seem to hear of many distressing things. On the one hand, there's the controversial Hambantota port transaction, of which the relevant documentation is not before the public domain. However, does this not go against the very principles of the right to information, which was constitutionally enshrined by the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which was brought into play by the incumbent government? On the other hand, we hear of a draft audit bill, where we hear of the powers vested in the Auditor General being curtailed. We also see in the public foray incidents where the Auditor General's office has come under criticism from political parties. This is what we'll be talking about today. Let me introduce our panel of eminent guests for you this afternoon. Mr. Kirthi Thenakun, who is the Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election and is also the consultant to the Anti-Corruption Front. Good evening and very nice to see you.
Very nice to see you.
Also joining us is Asoka Obesekara, who's the Executive Director of Transparency International Sri Lanka. Nice to see you, Asoka.
Pleasure to be here.
And finally, Mr. Maitri Gunaratna, Attorney at Law, former Chairman, Lanka Coal Company. Thanks for being on the show with us tonight.
Thank you.
My first question is to Kirthi Thenakun. Mr. Thenakun, you are the consultant to the Anti-Corruption Front. So, have you been keeping busy these days, or what's going on?
I mean, it's unbelievably busy these days, and it says so many things in a short nutshell. We are talking about the treasury bond issue, which was raising questions after question these days, and Mr. Arjun Mahendran, who was the former removed the governor of the central bank, is now once again appearing in some meetings in the Ministry of Finance building, and he is getting involved with so many discussions during the last 3-4 months with various investors, various policymakers, and try to influence the central bank. In the other hand, we have seen that Lanka Coal Company issue, the fact that it is one of the most corrupt deals when it comes to the Hapalana government. In the other hand, we saw that the pressure is mounting on Mr. Upul Jayasuriya to remove from his chairmanship of the Board of Investment. And in the other hand, we saw the developments which was very unhealthy when it comes to the transparency and the international negotiations with some of the foreign indirect investments in related to the Mr. Malik Samaravikrama's ministry. And we have seen in some cases that the agency for development, so-called agency for development, which is very unconstitutional and it is not properly established entity, which was doing negotiations with the number of foreign investors, which is once again totally legal. It is not according to the law. In the other hand, it is not ethical to have these sort of a thing. And now we have seen that once again the Southern Development Authority, which was a non-entity once again, which was abolished during the Divinaguma Front when it was introduced, is doing negotiations with Chinese government to sell our property to a Chinese entity. So all these issues is not what we looked for when the January 8th so-called revolution took place. And we are having so much of issues about the transparency, the integrity of the government, and when it comes to the financial negotiations, we are seeing a very darker side, especially when it comes to the Horn rubber factory thing, and when the very senior ministers try to manipulate and stood with the culprits. It's unbelievable stuff.
So, are you saying that we need an intervention to proceed?
Definitely, yes. I mean, the civil society, which was very vocal when the Mahinda Rajapaksa's regime was doing the same things in a very unethical manner, is most of our friends has keep their mouth very much shut during these days, which is shocking to us. And some of these people are trying to push the agenda of the constitutional reforms and the political reforms. Of course, it is the promise which was made by the government. They have to deliver on this, but here compromising with the corruption and bribery in such a big scale is, I think, no way can justify in that sense.
Thank you. Mr. Tenakun, you spoke about the Agency for Development and the Southern Development Authority. We'll be getting into detail on those two agencies as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, we have
Asoka Obesekara, as someone who personally got involved in this fight towards making RTI, the Right to Information Act, a reality, the minister has finally said that it will be fully implemented on the 3rd of February. That's just in 3 days' time. How do you feel? I mean, can we be happy about this change?
Well, I think the fact that we have an RTI Act is one that should be celebrated. It's a big step in the right direction, and in a way, whilst one would want to celebrate getting the passing of the RTI Act, there is a serious concern in how RTI will be implemented. Now, we can go through all of the nitty-gritty of the RTI Act, and we've done that in the past, but I think what I would say is that RTI is going to require a bit of stamina. Now, obviously, there is now a right for citizens to request information which is held by the state. There are exclusion clauses which have got a lot of coverage, but those exclusion clauses are not very different to the exclusion clauses that are found in many RTI acts across the world. But it's really about implementation, and I think we all hear this all the time. Now, for instance, we have very prescribed timelines in which you can hear back after filing an RTI request. Do I expect those timelines to be adhered to? I certainly hope they are, but I am fully prepared for those timelines not to be adhered to. And if they are not, to then go through the system and appeal, or and where necessary reapply for different information where it's blocked. It's going to require that level of persistence.
Have information officers been appointed?
So we have been informed that in many of the public authorities, information officers have been appointed. Many of the public authorities which I have a particular interest in requesting information from, from Friday onwards, I have already found out the names of the information officers. So I'm readying myself for Friday.
All right. So you sound optimistic.
Well, when I say optimistic, this act will only be successful if citizens actually use this act. And the likelihood is that with the disappointment that will inevitably come, a citizen will require some stamina to keep filing and pushing to get this information that they are anyway entitled to. So, I mean, I am enthusiastic in the sense that now I can say that I have the right to a particular information, but I'm not expecting it to be a cakewalk. I'm expecting it to be a little difficult, but that's a responsibility that organizations like Transparency International Sri Lanka must take on.
Asoka, how do we, as a society, enable the citizens themselves to apply for this information?
Well, actually, this is that's a very pertinent question, and there's a big difficulty here, because on one side, civil society organizations may try to engage the public in how they can use RTI requests, things of that nature. But really speaking, I think the state needs to take on some responsibility here, because on one side, the state sees themselves as being supply side. So rolling out RTI, ensuring that information officers are appointed, all of these sorts of things. But actually, when the state and when the government, through the 19th Amendment, gives the fundamental right to information to its citizens, it also needs to take a demand-side responsibility in actually telling citizens that information can be requested in such and such formats through the state media. Very little of that has been seen as of now. So actually the bona fide commitment of the government to RTI can be questioned given the lack of public awareness that on the government's part.
Because Asoka, in India, it was the RTI was it came into being from the grassroots level itself.
Indeed, and I think in that sense, in Sri Lanka, it hasn't had that sort of groundswell. So so driving demand will need to be done in a very different way to which it's happened in India.
Thank you very much. I finally move on to Mr. Maitri Gunaratna, who's an attorney at law and also the former chairman of Lanka Coal Company. You campaigned for change. You got change. However, you have now been changed. What do you have to say about this?
No one is more hated than he who speaks the truth, was said by Plato. So I suppose I have been a casualty of speaking the truth. What I can say is, with regard to this tender, with regard to this coal tender, under this particular administration, the good governance administration which came to power on the 8th of January 2050, this is the most corrupt deal which I think this country would have seen. I say it for three reasons. One, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, has pronounced that this coal tender was illegal, was null and void. The members of the tender board had misled the cabinet and obtained permission of the cabinet to give it to this company and pronounced a judgment. Although the petitioner's case was dismissed, the court saw the magnitude of the corruption which had taken place in the whole procurement process, that it went to use the words, the conduct of public officials have shocked the conscience of court, and the court has used all possible language to say that this tender should be cancelled. Now, after the pronouncement of this judgment, the Yahapalana government does not take any action. Then before that, the procurement process provides for unsuccessful tenderers to go to the Procurement Appeal Board, which comes under His Excellency the President. Now, when the unsuccessful tenderers went to the Procurement Appeal Board, the decision of the Procurement Appeal Board was to cancel the tender. So now two organizations, independent organizations, one the Supreme Court, the other the Procurement Appeal Board, both cannot be wrong. And then the third, the Auditor General comes in with his report last month and says that the tender board has continuously kept away information to the cabinet. Now, having done all that, these officials have still been kept intact. They are still running large as life. There is another tender which is coming for the season 2017-2018. So they thought it fit that if this chairman continues to be there, that it's going to be another problem for the season 2017-2018. So therefore, they thought it fit to remove me and go ahead.
Well, to question these gentlemen more on what is really happening in Sri Lanka in terms of good governance, in terms of corruption, and in terms of the way forward. We have two journalists here with us this evening. Chaturanga Hapuarachi, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thank you.
And Mr. Faraz Shaukat Ali. Good evening to you, Faraz.
Good evening, Sonali.
Let's start off with you.
Okay, let's see. I think we'll start off with Mr. Maitri Gunaratna then. Mr. Gunaratne, since we are fast approaching the 4th of February, our Day of Independence, I thought I'd ask you your reaction to this little statistic. 69 years after gaining independence, 11 heads of state, there have been 3 politicians, 3 members of parliament, and I think they were ministers as well, who have been removed from office on the mere allegation of corruption. And this happened, this action was taken sorry, by the Prime Minister who perhaps served the least of the times of a period in office, and that was the late S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike. And these 3 people that he removed was on the mere allegation of corruption. It didn't go to court. And these 3 people were all people very close to him, who helped him found the party. And yet he gave them only one choice, Hobson's choice: leave or be prosecuted. And they left to the end of their political career. So only 3 people in 69 years. And this, we have a whole government here that are elected on the basis of good governance. Does it mean, A, that Sri Lankan politicians are so clean, and so it must be qualifying in the World Guinness Book of Records, or is there a huge cover-up that's gone on for 69 years?
For us, a direct answer, a huge cover-up has been going on all along. Actually, I mean, since I have got into government office and I seen what has been going on, it is a Herculean task, I think, to do away with corruption in this country, because it from top to bottom, this is very, very prevalent, large as life. And the first casualty is the persons who try to stop it, which is extremely clear in the coal tender. As far back as 2015, I'm only taking this as an example. 2015, I was appointed in January. By June, July, I saw the process taking a shortcut, and I brought it to the notice of the Secretary to the Ministry, Mr. Batagoda. From that point onwards, I was hounded. And the first thing they did, they are masters at it. The first thing he did was, he accused me of trying to support a bidder. So that, then what happens is you tend to pull back your punches, and then they can have their own way. So by that way, they tried to shut me down. But the moment he did it, I wrote to the Honorable Minister and I told him that this accusation has been made against me. I want you to hold an inquiry, and if I am guilty in that inquiry, I will leave my position. So corruption is large as life. Every section, every part of the government, I feel, is corrupt. It's a sad situation. I think both these gentlemen, their organizations have been fighting for it. It's going to be an extremely tough fight for us.
So is there hope for this country then?
Well, the only hope I feel is the present president, because people have kept so much of trust and confidence in him, and if he cracks the whip, if he takes control and does away with the people who are evidently corrupt, as you say, if the late Prime Minister Mr. S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike on a mere allegation got rid of 3 of his most trusted men. Here, I think there are enough allegations to get rid of the cabinet twice.
Mr. Tennakoon, quick question to you now. In our first round, you spoke of the former governor of the central bank being present at a certain meeting. I believe it was held on the 5th of November, if I'm not mistaken. You sent 2 letters to the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, and
I sent 4 letters to the Secretary of the Ministry.
4 letters and 1 to the governor, current governor of the central bank as well. Now, one promise that was given by this government when it came to power was the availability of, or rather the transparency that will be there. Through events that are taking place like this, like the Horana Tyre Factory and even the Hambanthuda project that we are going to talk about today, can you be satisfied of the amount of transparency that is there?
Not at all. I mean, when we made this allegation and when we went very openly, when we start talking about this last Monday, 2 days after that, the ministry made a very short press note saying that the Arjuna Mahendran is not holding any positions at the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
Then the issue comes, if he is not holding any responsibility down there or a position down there, how he is appearing on these meetings? And according to our information, I'll show you this particular document, which was on 24th of July 2016. There was a meeting held at 5:30 at the Ministry of Finance, and this is the name of Mr. Arjuna Mahendran. Under his name, there's no designation provides us. So this is a very concrete evidence that this man is violating the very basics of the public administration. And here comes, in 2016, November 1st, there was a meeting. Arjuna Mahendran was not participated in that meeting, but here these are the decisions took place, and these are the the people who was entrusted to follow these actions up. Here comes the name of Arjun Mahendran. The other people who was responsible to follow up all these actions are central bank government officials. Only Arjuna Mahendran comes outside from the central bank, is listed down here. What we are asking is that how Arjuna Mahendran is giving advice to the present central bank governor. The central bank governor, Mr. Kumaraswamy, has to answer this particular question. Here we can provide so much of information. We are having all this information. These people, they don't hold office. They go down there, sit next to the minister and giving advice. They go into the international biddings, the international deals, and making a deal, making negotiations, making very untransparent documents. Even without putting their signatures, they are appearing on next week. They are appearing on the cabinet appearing as the cabinet papers. So this is a government which is talking about something and doing exactly the opposite of that particular action.
Mr. Maitri Gunratna, question to you as well, saying on the same subject of transparency. A statement that is made to you when it comes to this, you being removed from your position as the chairman of Lanka Coal, is that this was a decision to shuffle the board of Lanka Coal, and this was not directed at you personally. That is something that is being spoken of in the public. What do you have to say about this?
That is a convenient excuse they are giving, because I actually, Chaturanga, expected this to come 1 year ago. But unfortunately, they delayed it about 1 year. That is just a convenient excuse they are giving, because they wanted me to go, because now they are referring to the Auditor General's report. Now the Auditor General's report does not in any way find fault with Lanka Coal Company. What he says is professional due care has not been exercised by the ministry, by the electricity board, by Lanka Coal, by the CEB, and by the Ceylon Shipping Corporation. So the Auditor General has been quite clear in saying that when he determines that there is a fraud or there is corruption to the extent of 4.1 billion rupees, he throws the net right across. But what the secretary does is he singles out only me for obvious reasons, and he sends a letter to the Honorable Minister asking that the board to be dissolved. So it's a simple process. You dissolve the board and you can reappoint the same members, but they have got rid of the person they wanted to, because I suppose I was causing the most amount of obstacles in their path to making
even you said it at first. You said that there was an allegation against you that you were somewhat being a part or lobbying for a certain company that was providing coal to the country.
Yeah.
Was there that allegation, and was there an inquiry held against you that you were?
There was absolutely no inquiry.
There was no inquiry.
No, because Chaturanga, now these are all international bidders. They come and take part in a tender process, and will say one person is selected as the lowest tenderer. I mean, we have to work with them, and we can't show a kind of hostile attitude towards them. So we have to work with them and see that the process takes place, because the tender goes on for 1 year. Right, ships are coming, and there is a lot of communication which has to go. So we have to work with them and support their case. But in this instance, these were the allegations. Now, when that was at that time, then once the tender was given by spot tender to another company, the allegation came that I'm supporting that company. Then the third tenderer came in. We gave it to that. Same allegation came in.
There was no inquiry held against you.
No inquiry.
Even when you were removed this time around.
No, there was no inquiry at all.
Mr. Kirthi Tennakon, I have with me a petition that was filed by Dr. Lalitha Siri Gunaruwan, a fundamental rights petition, which seeks, inter alia, among others, an interim order restraining the agreement by the GOSL to hand over management, operation, ownership, leasing out or alienation of the Hambantota port and its property and assets. Now, interestingly, this petition also speaks of this body that you mentioned, the Southern Development Authority.
It's a non-existence.
We know that it has been repealed by Section 44 of the Divinaguma Act number 1 of 2013. Yes. However, there's a chairman designate of the Southern Development Board. That's one thing. The other is that there is a purported agency for development, which of which a managing director designate has been named, and he has been known to be entering into transactions with foreign parties as well. What have you got to say about this?
I mean, the same question I asked last Wednesday from the secretary of the Malik Samara Vikrama's ministry, how she, as a permanent secretary, how she is providing facilitations like the fuel for the vehicles, salaries for the staff, the electricity, the accommodation in the World Trade Center building, the West Tower, the level 25. And I asked her how, when there's a non-existent agency is down there, how she is providing the facilities as such. This is total abuse of state property, the resources, which is totally illegal when it comes to the administrative powers vested on her. And the other hand, these people goes there and making agreements, making negotiations.
Can such representations be made?
Yes, there are. Definitely there are. Especially the Mangalayappa, he has actually 2 or 3 designations. In some letters, it's totally different designations comes on and on, for that matter. And he is going here and there and making negotiations to, especially to sell some properties belonging to the government, especially with the very what they called so-called underperforming enterprises and all. He is one of the main negotiators of this. But here, this Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, is having a very big dream of getting all these entities together and to work on one sort of a one-stop shop to do all the businesses with the international community or the international investors, foreign direct investors and all that. He can have his dreams. It's fine to have dreams. But here the issue, we are having this particular drafted bill is defeated in 8 out of 9 provinces. Now, this is not going to happen in the parliament. It is not going to pass in the Sri Lankan parliament for sure. So, how these sort of designated people making negotiations, signing agreements, making the foreigners a Sri Lankan investment a joke and totally illegal entity when it comes to the practice. This is total rubbish and this is total unethical. This is not what the good governance is all about.
Mr. Gunaratna, what is the role of the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka?
Board of Investment has to facilitate investment in Sri Lanka basically. I remember when it was created during the regime of President Jayawardena, and I think Mr. Upali Jayawardena was the first Director General of the BOI. What they did was, when an investor comes into the country, there are a lot of approvals they have to get from various government organizations, and that can take maybe 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years, which will put off any investor. So what the BOI, why it was set up originally was to see that an investor within the shortest possible time will get his investment to grow. That was the purpose of the BOI, and then they started the various investment zones so that special facilities could be given to those who invest in those zones, and that created jobs. Now, if you take the Katunayaka Free Trade Zone, at one time I think it had more than about 400 to 500,000 people working there. Then they shifted it to then there was another one created in Biagama that also had an equal amount of people working in Biagama. Then there was the Koggala Free Trade Zone, which still I know there is about 15-20,000 people working, and it can be extended further. So basically the BOI was created to facilitate foreign investors and make it easier for them. So there is no need, as Mr. Tennakon says, for anyone to have a office on the 25th floor at the World Trade Center and duplicate that service without proper authority. If that is being done, that is being done for some kind of sinister purpose with a different motive in mind.
So we're talking about bringing FDIs to Sri Lanka, we're talking about accelerated development. So we have the Board of Investment currently established. Then what is going on?
That has to be, that question has to be asked from the Minister of Foreign Investment and I think from the Prime Minister.
This is one question we are keep on asking for last 2 months. What is the role of the BOI and what is the role of the so-called Agency for Development, which is an non-entity in the same time? And the issue here, we are not getting direct foreign investment at the moment. It's a 300 billion what they got, million they have, what they have got US dollars, which is hitting the rock bottom at the moment. Sri Lanka is now seen as an unfriendly country for foreign direct investments. The people, the investors are going to different Asian countries, especially the Bangladesh, Vietnam, and so on. So the issue here, the people sees this. I mean, they are not just the deaf and blind people. The investors, they are comes with the open mind. And they see when these sort of illegal negotiations are done by the individuals to get to their purposes done for that matter. And that's one of the main reasons this particular so-called Yahapalana government is not getting foreign direct investment. For last 68, 70 years, I'll say basically, whenever a UNP government is in power, people has just an attitude that there will be a better, bright future when it comes to the economic perspective. And this UNP-led Yahapalana government has proven that particular aspiration, the line of thinking of the general known fact is no longer valid with this government. The reason, I'll say, unbelievable corruption, amount of corruption is now getting on with this government.
Mr. Obesekar, two gentlemen on your left and your right talking about the amount of corruption that is taking place in the country. One talking about the coal deal and the other talking about the corruption levels in general taking place. You are the Executive Director of Transparency International. Do you think that this country has transparency or whether this country needs improvement in transparency. What is going on in terms of transparency in our country? Because this was a major promise of the government when it came to power.
Indeed, and I mean, I think, so recently, in the last week, the Corruption Perception Index for Sri Lanka, the latest data is out that Transparency International produces, and what we can see is that there has been a marginal decline in the score. So
15 places, if I'm not mistaken.
but it out of 100 it was scored at 37 last year. It scored at 36 for 2016. So it's a marginal decline, but I think even if we said it was stable, what we can certainly say is that there is no trajectory in which would be in line with the government's mandate, and the government's mandate is an anti-corruption mandate after all. But I would say that we speak about revolution, but really when we speak about revolution of the 8th of January, it was more reconfiguration. And I think there are a couple of points worth making here. Firstly, SEABOC, the Commission to Investigate Allegations of Bribery or Corruption, under the 19th Amendment, SEABOC has the power to file actions on their own motion. Now that is something which is very, very frequently forgotten. Because if we are supposed to be having an independent commission here, the fact that they can prosecute on their own is a very significant factor which we frequently forget, and we keep turning our hand to the government and saying, why is the government not doing something? Actually, the Commission of SEABOC should be held to account there. That's a key point.
With Sonali's permission, if I can ask one more question from Mr. Tenakon. Mr.
Can I very quickly answer on the point what the Ashoka made? I mean, I am totally agree with Ashoka on that basis. I mean, the powers are vested on the bribery and corrupt SEABOC for that matter. But here, I mean, we want to find out what happened with the treasury bond investigations, which is totally complete as far as we know, and it's a very comprehensive study done with very big expertise, very clever, in-depth studies were done on this, and the investigations were fully closed now. It's ready to go into the courts, but it is not happening down there. The issue, I will say very simply, they are very directly influenced by the very senior politicians, and that's why Mrs. Vikram Singh has to go back to the Aegis department.
Once again, a quick question to you now. Mr. Obesekar brought an interesting point and reminded us about the government's anti-corruption drive that they also promised in the run-up to the election. Yesterday, the cafe under your signature has written a letter to the president, and there is an indication which says that there seems to be a drive for corruption, the drive to stop corruption in the country starting again. Do you believe so?
Actually, what I said is that there's a dialogue, I mean very healthy dialogue against the corruption which is taking at the moment, which is very good sign. But here, under the 100 days program, the President and the Prime Minister, what they promised to Sri Lanka is that they will come up with the national audit bill, which has not happened. And as far as I know, this particular national audit bill was submitted to the Aegis department, got it clearance on October 19, 2016, and the former chairman of the Transparency International, Mr. Veliamuna, was with us, and we had discussions with the president, and myself and Sumangala Thero was down there. When we met the president, he very clearly said in the first 2 weeks of January, it will be presented and gazetted and presented into the parliament. For Mr. J.C. Veliamuna, in front of Mr. J.C. Veliamuna, the president ordered the president's secretary, Mr. Abekon, to gazette it on January 8, which has not happened. Now we know that particular draft is with the Prime Minister's office for almost 3 or 4 months, of course, and we don't know what is happening there. In the other hand, we see various attempts to discredit the Auditor General, and the powers vested on the Auditor General is trying to, they try to cut the feathers of the Aegis department, which is very iconic. The issue here, the promises made by the President and the Prime Minister, where are we going? We are very much shocked by the actions of this particular government, because this is not what they promised us on January 8th.
Thank you very much. With that, we go in for a short commercial break. You're watching Face the Nation. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Face the Nation. We're in conversation with Kirti Tennakun, Executive Director, CAFE, Asoka Obesekara, Executive Director, Transparency International Sri Lanka, and Maitri Gunaratna, Attorney at Law and former Chairman of Lanka Coal Company. Asoka Obesekara, your organisation has done quite a bit of work with regard to declaration of assets and liabilities. I mean, over the recent past, we've seen how parliamentarians have been summoned to court several times over their failure to do so. What's the latest with regard to this?
So, in a nutshell, every citizen has the right to request asset declarations of public officials. If it's a backbench MP, you can request it from the office of the Speaker. If it's a cabinet minister, you can request it from the office of the President. And you pay 750 rupees to get that to your hand. We've been digging through and finding this old legislation. Many people felt that this right didn't even exist. Actually, what I have here, this here is what more than half of Parliament's asset declarations look like. Now the problem is that I can show you have the right to access this information, I have the right to access it. But if I show you what's in this, I am liable to a 2,000 rupee fine and or 2 years of rigorous imprisonment. So it's absolutely ridiculous.
So you're not willing to take that risk?
Well, unfortunately, I don't get to choose which penalty it is. It's absolutely ridiculous the way it's currently structured. But I can tell you and the viewers at home that the information that you garner from looking at an asset declaration is really quite something, and it sheds a great deal of light on the elected the people that we elect.
So let me get this straight. I get to look at it and exclaim, and that's it.
Indeed. But I'm hoping, well, not only hoping, but on the reading of the Right to Information Act, an asset declaration is fair game. And if I request an asset declaration under the Right to Information Act, I'm not bound by the secrecy provisions of the Declaration of Assets and Liabilities Act. So then I'm free to disseminate that information as I wish. So maybe that's something for a few of the journalists here and the viewers at home to think about looking to Friday.
Also, Asoka, talking about getting back to the RTI, in light of what Mr. Kirti Tennakun said in the earlier round, I mean, we see so many transactions which are questionable, transactions where the documentation is kept away from the public. Now, we are moving away from an era of secrecy. How do you view this? I mean, can we practically ask for documentation? Is it actually going to happen?
Well, it can be requested. I think one of the challenges is to, through RTI, to ask the right questions, because still you're requesting information which is being held by the state. But to ask the right questions, you also need to have a bit of an understanding of what documents are held by state. And I'll tell you one thing, and I think as representing a civil society organization, and I think this goes for civil broadly as well, this is the establishment code. Now this is the core book that guides what public servants, how they're thinking. Now this was last revised in 1985. So that's 32 years ago. Now when we think about all of these commitments to open government, right to information, everything else, if this book does not get amended, you have an entire generation of public servants who have grown in an environment of closed-mindedness, having to run a system of open government. and you can see the issue that we're going to face here.
So there's a clear disconnect there.
There is a disconnect. That said, the government has also passed something called the Open Government Partnership National Action Plan. These are all sort of pie in the sky, but when you look at some of the finer points of this, they've actually agreed in a few months' time to remove all of the secrecy provisions on asset declarations. Quite importantly, in corruption investigations, they've also agreed in the next 1.5 years to also change the anti-corruption sort of framework and to ensure that information can be shared between different agencies. One of the big issues which many people don't also appreciate in this is that you have CIRBOC, who have the authority to investigate issues of bribery and corruption, but with money laundering, which is which flows from bribery and corruption, the authority for that is with the FCID. And the issue there is that CIRBOC, under Section 17 of the CIRBOC Act, can't share the information from the bribery and corruption cases with the FCID. So within this Open Government Partnership Plan, the government has said that they're going to remove these sorts of information, these secrecy barriers to ensure greater sharing of information across all these agencies. So I mean, the fact that these things have got cabinet approval is encouraging, but not for a minute would we sit back and convince ourselves that these things will get pushed through government's will alone.
Thank you very much. Mr. Keith Thendakun, I'd like to come to you now. With regard to the Auditor General's office and the recent criticism that the Auditor General has come under. According to Article 153H of the Constitution, it says that the Audit Service Commission shall be responsible and answerable to Parliament. However, we hear of moves where it says that not only should it be answerable to Parliament, but it should also work in tandem with the Finance Minister. So doesn't this go against the very principles of the Auditor General having to be independent?
We are seeing more and more funny explanations coming from the different politicians these days, and from a very serious ministers for that matter. It's very clear that Auditor General's department is responsible only to the legislative, that's the Parliament. And the minister, as an executive, part of the executive, cannot ask for a selected information or a clarification or any other explanation for that matter from the Auditor General's department. In this case, the Financial Minister wrote a letter to the Auditor General and asked very specific details in related to the Treasury bond issue, which is very much controversial and which was alleged that the Ministry of Finance got involved, and the beneficiaries out of that is also some members of the Ministry of Finance. The Auditor General prepared the report and he very correctly sent it to the Minister, and in the same time he did his part as he mastered his responsibility. He sent a copy to the Speaker and to the Chairman of the COP, which is the right thing to do. And it is getting criticized just because the Minister cannot get what he wanted. Definitely the issue, the Minister was so much frustrated that he was not able to get the benefit out of that. He cannot master it, he cannot manipulate it as he looked for that sort of exercise. The issue here, now everyone knows there's a very big issue with the Treasury bond issue. Now who is getting blamed for that? Some UN peers directly accusing the Auditor General's department and the COP, Mr. Srinal Handulnetti. If someone left the country for something like 8-10 months for that matter, is coming and watching the television by this time, then he might think maybe the Auditor General Department and the Sunil Handunnetti is the corrupt people of the Treasury bond issue, because that sort of information flow is ensured by the UNP in a sense. When it comes to the Lanka Coal Company deal, who are now they are accusing Maitri Gunaratne and the Auditor General. Now, given the Supreme Court decision, the Procurement Appeal Board decision has given part. In the same time, they are saying the Auditor General is the culprit. When it comes to the well-known sand issue in the Dewlapitiya, now for last 8 or 9 years, this racket is playing down. They are destroying the environment totally and all that. The people kept blind eye on that. Ranjan Ramanayaka came and protest, and that's a very hated argument. I am not taking it out. I mean, from Ranjan. But the way he behaved is not the most appropriate way. But here, everyone is pointing the finger on Ranjan Ramanayaka. Is he the one who's destroyed the environment? He was the man behind that racket? No. The issue now, very calculated and operative mechanism is in operation to show that the people who was going against these sort of corrupt practices are labeled as the culprits. And that's why we see that the Auditor General's Department is getting backed by different politicians to get their private agendas behind them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maitri Gunaratne.
Can I just add a little to what Mr. Tennakon said? Now, I have got an Auditor General report done by the Auditor General himself regarding the Lanka Coal Company. Now, I must say that as a public official, he called all stakeholders for 2 meetings, and he put most of the report on a slideshow and said, well, these are the findings we have made. Is there any kind of discrepancies which you need to adjust? And gave us an opportunity to do that. So that is what you call transparency. That is what you call good governance. So if this Auditor General is able to do this, right, and we are not contesting this report. This report is a very good report which he has given in a short period of time. But unfortunately, what is happening is they are using the report, as Mr. Tennakon says, to the hunter is becoming the hunted now. Basically, that's what's happening.
Mr. Gunaratne, my question to you. We are right now seeing a national unity government in play. However, whither to the concept of collective ministerial responsibility? As an attorney at law, can you tell us and the viewers watching us from home how the doctrine of collective ministerial responsibility is supposed to pan out? Because we see contradictory statements being made by ministers all of the time.
Sonali, I don't think there is any kind of collective responsibility in this parliament now, or in the cabinet, because each minister, now for instance, if you take the Horona tire project, one minister is coming and saying that the land has been given at 100 rupees. Another, the Minister of Investment, is coming and saying that is not so. Right? So now, basically, under collective responsibility, once it is decided in the cabinet, it should be kept within the cabinet. It should not go out. But I don't think in Sri Lanka this has ever happened. Cabinet information has always gone out faster before even the cabinet meetings finished. So that is that. Although there is a concept like that, I don't think anything is going to happen. Anything is going to happen with regard to the collective responsibility of the cabinet and in the present government.
With regard to the matter of the Auditor General, the Auditor General's office and the Auditor General himself coming under attack from various politicians. In terms of the Constitution, how do you view this?
Pardon?
In terms of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And given the fact that the Constitution has enshrined this office as an independent office, how do you view this?
No, any minister or MP who tries to find fault with the Auditor General without any valid reason is unacceptable. And I feel that if such thing happens, they should take action against such persons for maliciously trying to attack the Auditor General, or for that matter anyone. Because if they have something to hide, they will always want to attack the person who is trying to find it. So what I am saying is this kind of behavior of any politician, any government official should not be allowed. Auditor General, Attorney General, the IGP, all those independent organizations should be allowed to act independently. And anyone trying to go and disrupt their duties should be dealt with severely.
Let's now open the floor for questions. Chatu?
Thank you, Sonali. Question to Mr. Gunaratne once again. Now, you say that a certain individual who did not like your conduct at the ministry or at Lanka Coal did something and took you out. Now, if what you're saying is right, if you were taken out in that manner, whatever that particular person, as you say, wants to get done will get done. The coal deals, the corrupt deals will take place. What's going to happen there? This is once again the money of the public. They are going to swindle the money, as you say, the way they want. And no one is going to come forward because they have set a precedent, because if you speak, you will be sent out, according to what you say. I'm basing this all on your statement. So what's going to happen to our money?
Well, our money is not in safe hands. Because Chaturanga, at the moment, when we can buy the coal at, we'll say, $78 to $80, we are paying about $90. So we are paying about $10 more than the market price. So that's what has happened. Right, so therefore 1 million tons of coal which we are bringing in right now is being paid at $10 more than the market rate. So that's where the loss is. This loss has been exposed. The Supreme Court has decided on this loss. The Auditor General has commented very seriously on this loss. The Procurement Appeal Board has said that the tender should have been cancelled. Now 3 organizations have acted against this, but nothing has happened, and I mean it is sad that this Honorable Minister Ranjit Siambalapitiya, when a Supreme Court has pronounced a judgment that the tender board has acted in excess of its power, has misled the cabinet, it is sad that the Honorable Minister, the Deputy Minister, has not done anything against these officials. So this is not the good governance we fought for. This is not the good governance we certainly fought for. We expect better governance than this.
Chaturanga, with your permission, can I ask you one question, Mr. Gunaratne? I mean, 3 weeks ago, you signed the documents to purchase coal.
Yeah.
So what is the amount you had paid per ton for that matter?
No, that's what I said. Now, when we bought the coal on the spot tender, okay, or if we are buying it today on the spot tender, I would reckon we can get it at $78 per ton.
Yeah.
But now the tender has been given to this company on the instance of the cabinet, where again the cabinet has been misled for the second time, not the first time. First time the cabinet was misled, the Supreme Court found it and made a pronouncement. Now, notwithstanding that, the cabinet has been misled for the second time. Yeah. Right. So now we are paying between $88 to $90 per ton. So we are paying exactly $10 more per ton.
Mr. Tenakon, now interestingly, as to what Mr. Gunaratne is saying, a person who was the hunter is being hunted. Now this matter comes back to the audit bill. Now we saw a recent newspaper article saying that the Auditor General was interviewed, and the Auditor General is expressing what he needs to say, and he's saying that the Auditor General does not have the teeth. His only power is to give strong opinions. But he also at the same time says that certain individuals in the government, key ministers, are having a grudge with him. That is what, when we read, that is what is there in this thing. Do you think that this is the case? Why is the Auditor General of the country, who is a normal officer, being attacked to this extent?
I mean, he has exposed most of these corrupt deals inside this present Yahapalana government. When it comes to the treasury bond issue, it was the Auditor General who did expose came up with the figures, fact and figures for that matter. When it comes to the Lanka coal company deal, we were estimating the loss at, you might remember that anti-corruption front continuously claimed that the loss could somewhere around 3.9 billion. But here the Auditor General's department finally came up with a figure, 4,135, if my memory is correct, millions has lost. So it's much bigger than our estimated number for that matter. So the burden on this government exposing has been done by the Auditor General's department. So that's why this especially some of the key ministers want to hunt down the Auditor General's department. Moreover, I'll say the issue here, the real tragedy here is that now this government, the President and the Prime Minister promised about the National Audit Bill, which was now cleared by the Auditor General's department long time ago, 4 months ago, and it was continuously said by President himself that it will be gazetted, and President shows his intention that he is ready to present it to the Parliament himself, and is in a danger now.
Well, Mr. Tenako, now what we saw in this in the news reports recently as well, we saw that according to that Auditor General statement, the surcharge powers that are vested with the Auditor General only has also been removed according to this draft bill. Do you think that the government or whoever is in the government who wants to attack the Auditor General, isn't it unfair just to attack the Auditor General as a person, where when you do things through the audit bill, the post is what's at risk? It will continue to the future as well.
Definitely,
this person will stay here and go after 2 years.
Yeah, definitely. And in the other hand, when it comes to the surcharging factor, and we had long discussions with the different stakeholders on that matter, the issue, I mean, politicians cannot rob a country. Politicians cannot do malpractices if the government officials are not supporting them. And there's a group of people, public servants who are supporting these sort of corrupt deals, and they are the ones really shocked with will be affected with these sort of a surcharge. So they are the ones campaigning continuously to remove the surcharge, and I think, I mean, the blame has to go for those corrupt set of government servants who demanded and got very successfully get rid of the surcharge factor.
Sorry, thank you. Mr. Tenako, this is for you. I've got a long list here. But first of all, I'd like to ask you, you referred to this letter that the Minister of Finance, or the Ministry of Finance, have confirmed that Mr. Arjuna Mahendran is not employed in any shape or form by the Ministry. In that case, Mr. Tenako, can you perhaps tell us, what is this chap doing walking along the corridors of power? Of the Treasury Secretariat? I mean, you need to, first of all, you need to pass a simple security process there. You can't just wander in and wander into meetings where there are state affairs being discussed. So what is he doing, like some sort of lost lamb?
For us, 2017 January 6th at 11 o'clock, there was a meeting at the ministry. The invitees for that particular meeting was done. Invitations were sent by the Secretary of the Ministry, Dr. Samrathong. And Arjuna Mahendran came all the way to that meeting, entered into the minister's room, and he sat with the Mr. Kumarasamy, the present governor, minister, the secretary, and some other officials were down there. And he grabbed the chair down there next to the minister, sat down there at the corner of the table, and he was discussing issues which has to taken place with the monetary board.
So clearly the Ministry of Finance is lying or being economical.
Definitely, I mean, the issue here, an ordinary person or an expert for that matter can be invited or not. When it comes to the very basics, that sort of a high profile meeting, even an invitee is not taking. So definitely, either they are lying for that matter, or
he was a special invitee.
He couldn't be. He
could be the minister.
Oh, from last July, when he lost his job, he continuously participated in these meetings. At the very beginning, on the month of July, August and September, these meetings were held on Mondays and Thursdays, and then these dates were shifted to Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 o'clock, basically, regularly.
So the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank, doesn't this minister offer any form of explanation as to what this chap is doing? He seems to be wandering around the corridors of power without a security clearance, without any form of formal appointment. So what is he doing?
For us, this is one question we are keep on asking.
Even the cleaners have a security clearance.
This is some question we are asking from the Dr. Samaratunga. We have wrote 4 letters now to Dr. Samaratunga during the last week, and none of these letters were answered. But he is sending the press releases to the media when they reported us. The issue here, it's very crystal clear. This man sit on these meetings, made discussions, part of that particular discussions, and given directions to the present governor.
And then the ministry merely says that he's not employed by them.
Yes, and I was watching the news last week, of course, Minister Ravi Karunanayake in Mana saying that when the Prime Minister instruct these people, when Prime Minister is sending people in the caliber of Arjun Mahendran, there's nothing they can do. But I'll tell you the interesting part. The Prime Minister is represented officially by Dr. Bhaskar Lingam, not by Arjun Mahendran. So, is the Prime Minister sending 2 people for this sort of high profile meeting? I am doubting. It has never happened in Sri Lankan history for that matter.
Now, that was my first question. The next bit is this. It's nearly, it's over 2 years since this government have come into power in some shape or form. So we've had the infamous bond scandal that started in February 2015. Then we've had the coal transaction. We've had the Outer Circular Highway. We've had the Central Expressway. We've had the Slave Island land. We've had the tyre factory. We've had Volkswagen. We've had the EPF losses of 14 billion. We have had Prados released by the Minister of Finance without paying the right amount of duties whilst the investigation was going on. We've had 100,000 rupees a month allowance to these MPs. We've had duty-free permits. And we've had the infamous proposal of renting cars at 700,000 rupees a month because they need an appropriate car to get down to their electorates. Then we've had this National Audit Commission. We've had the Auditor General being hammered every day almost. And then we have this something through the back door saying that the Minister of Finance should work in tandem with the Auditor General or the National Audit Commission. What on earth is this tandem?
For us, you missed one of the most important things with your list. What is happening with the Sri Lankan custom at the moment? It is above most of what you have mentioned in in your list. Go ahead, your question, please.
What is this business about tandem? Why should the Auditor General? Where is his independence gone? Out of the window.
Here, I mean, the Auditor General, to be fair to him, he has done his job. And everyone in this country knows officially, as he has put his stamp down there, how much money we have lost with the Lanka coal company. How much money now we have lost with the tender bond issue. And how much we will lost with the different, according to your list. I mean, the issue, he has done his job. whatever the attempts coming from these ministers, I mean non-ministers, for these sort of things, I mean the issue, his credibility will be up and run. The issue here, the political leadership of the country, the political leadership of the president and the prime minister, what they are going to do. And the other hand, it's the responsibility of the citizens to pressure the prime minister and the president. Now we are experiencing enough, and enough is enough. We have to make that pressure. The most unfortunate fact, I think, when it, as a civil society member here, the people who fought with us has isolated us. And most of these people who fought against the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime is now saying, we are having our government, I mean corruption is everywhere sort of approach. This is not going to work, because just as we are losing the battle against the corruption, we are losing the electoral reforms, we are losing the reformist agenda. The constitutional reforms will not take place
Mr. Tennakoon,
if we are allowing this to happen.
I have with me a letter sent on the Prime Minister's office letterhead dated 3rd December 2016 containing extracts of the minutes of Cabinet Committee on Economic Management meeting held on 30th November 2016. It's been sent to the Secretary of the Ministry of Ports and Shipping. Now here's the strange part. There are two identical letters with the identical wording in front, the identical reference numbers. However, when you go in depth to the content is rather different. I will read you one such clause. It says under the topic land lease. Now this is with regard to the transaction between the Sri Lanka Ports Authority and CM Port, which is the Chinese company. It says under land lease, it was explained that the Chinese side has proposed to have no revisions of the annual fixed lease payment within the first 15 years. You go to the identical other letter, it says, it was explained that the Chinese side has proposed to have no revisions of the annual fixed lease payment within first 15 years. It goes on to say, it was decided to allow that lease rental for the first 15 years to be fixed, and thereafter the lease rental be reviewed at every 5-year interval with a pre-agreed formula and defined variables. What is going on, Mr. Tennakoon? You are a consultant for the anti-corruption front. What is going on? I mean, how do we even explain these things?
I mean, we know the word prochery, what it means. And we have seen that Tissa Tanaik, the former General Secretary of the UNP, is charged with, and he was kept behind the bars. And we know the controversy with Vimal Veeravansha and his family. And we don't see any different from the letters going from the Prime Minister's office in this related. And far beyond that, I mean, we are in doubt, especially that questions rest with this Mr. Lalita Siriguna, Dr. Lalita Sirigunsuan's petitions to the Supreme Court, whether intentionally the Technical Evaluation Committee of the Port Authority, or that matter for in related to the land lease of the Hambantota Port, is misled. I think we have to find a very concrete answer for that, and we have seen different ministers are coming with different figures, facts for that matter, and none of them are lying for that matter. They are based on the relevant information, what they have given, what they have seen. It's a very serious of malpractices when it comes to the prochery is taking place, and the individuals who are doing these negotiations do not have any powers to do that. For example, this particular issue related to the Hambantota Port lease, the person who is doing this negotiation is not holding is not an official office bearer for that matter. And how on earth this man is given power to negotiate? And we saw in television he was signing documents, agreement, MOU with the Chinese government. So this is a very serious issue, and I think, I mean, the president cannot keep a blind eye on these issues.
Thank you very much. We're going for our final break, and we'll be back with our final round on Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. And on our final round, my question goes to Mr. Maitri Gunaratne, attorney at law. Mr. Gunaratne, are you fed up of Sri Lankan politics?
No, I am certainly not fed up of Sri Lankan politics. I think we all need to get involved and try to change this, how difficult it is. That is what we have done.
Are you disillusioned with the way the country is going?
No, I have always expected this kind of behavior because, Sonali, now if you take from 2010, even after the war was won, the manner in which His Excellency Mr. Rajapaksa was running the country after 2010, it was heading towards a dictatorship, right? But then we thought, okay, we sacrificed our political, our posts. I was a provincial council member. My friend Mr. Shiral Laktilaka was a provincial council member. We agitated for more democracy within the UNP. We didn't get that. Then we said we cannot proceed with the UNP in this manner, and we fought for a candidate, in the sense a common candidate, and we were thrown out of the party because of that. And ultimately in 2015 the UNP had to realize that the only way they could win is with a common candidate. So I would say we have contributed in some way or the other for this common candidate, for democracy in this country, and we have brought about this situation. I mean, this is a situation, as Ashoka just mentioned. The right to information bill was hidden away for the last maybe 10 to 15 years. Many people tried to bring it. I think Honorable Karujaya Surya tried to bring it as a private member's bill. That was shot down. No one wanted to bring it. But at least due to this change, His Excellency the President Maithripala Sirisena has been instrumental in restoring democracy, media freedom, and bringing in the many commissions. Now it is left for us to get them implemented. I think that has to come from the civil society organizations, where they will have to get the people out. They will have to agitate far vociferously to get this system going, because I know when it comes to the governance, the Prime Minister's side of the whole affair has been bad. He has failed basically. But with regard to the President has delivered, but only thing it's a bit slow and people are running out of patience.
Mr. Gunaratne, my final question to you. Will we see you back in active politics soon?
That is to be seen. There is no election yet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonali.
Asoka Obesekara, Executive Director, Transparency International, Sri Lanka. An act is only as good as its implementation. In 3 days' time, we will see the Right to Information Act in force. What are you, as a civil society activist, going to do to make sure that the individual from Hambantota, the individual from Vakare, knows of his or her right to apply to a public authority for information?
So, Sonali, already people within our office work across the country in trying to mobilize and sort of speak about the right to information and how citizens can use it. It will never be enough. And landing this purely on civil society is certainly never going to be adequate.
You're saying the government absolutely needs to get involved in ensuring that the citizens are also made aware of this? Indeed.
So, I mean, civil society has a role to play, but saying that this is a purely civil society driven initiative will lead to failure. What I would also say is that in summing up some of the things that we've heard today, this idea of corruption and having a legislative agenda to tackle corruption is really insufficient. Action needs to be seen. But I would also highlight the fact that there are certain steps which would help the public really start trusting the anti-corruption system. Will someone who is considered to have political cover under the new government be held to account? Question mark. Now, I would also add, and this is an allegation, but ultimately, even from the Australian media, there are allegations against the present president. And that has been sent to the Attorney General's department. Now, so many things are sent to the AG's department. It's like a vortex where things are sent to and forgotten. When will we start seeing action coming out from there? So, I mean, these are important questions, and it's for civil society and other concerned citizens to keep driving and pushing these factors.
Thank you very much, Asoka. And finally, Kirti Thenakun, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election, also consultant to the Anti-Corruption Front. We spoke a lot about the corruption that is currently rearing its ugly head all over the country. We also spoke about the need for transparency and the need to overcome this corruption. How are we going to go about doing this?
The issue, I think, for the first time in recent history, the government is trying to postpone the franchise of the people. The government is deliberately postponing the election, it seems. The local council elections, and the government is working on postponing the provincial council elections too until at least 2018 October. So, I mean, having elections is one of the measures ensure that the popularity of the government, and it allows the government to understand how popular they are and make leverages or maybe gear up their activities the way they want. But here, if the government is going to postpone the elections in a manner what they have done during the last year or so, definitely we will lose that the equipment, the technique which was ensuring to measure the real popularity of the government. By doing that, it could further go into the hands of the corrupt people, the hands of the corrupt politicians in an unbelievable, uncontrollable way. I think we should have proper election calendar, and we should go for the local elections as soon as possible, and just to get a chance to measure up the popularity of the government and ensure that they are going out of control, to ensure that these sort of unpopular, uncorrupt deals are taking place. So I think the only way out of that, you should go to the people, the government should go to the people and have a, they have to talk to the people, are we doing it right? For us, for the civil society members, we see the darker side of the story. Nothing is going in the perfect way as it promised by this Yahapalana government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirti Thenakun, Executive Director of CAFE. Also, thank you to Asoka Obesekara, Executive Director, Transparency International, Sri Lanka. And finally, Mr. Maitri Gunaratne, Attorney at Law. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on tonight's show. I also must thank our journalists, Mr. Faraz Shaukat Ali and Chaturanga Hapuarachi, for being on tonight's show. Remember that you, as citizens of the Republic, have an absolute and inalienable right to be aware and informed of the way your country is governed by a government that you have elected into power for a selected period of time. I end tonight's show with a quote from the 44th President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, who said, "If the people cannot trust their government, to do the job for which it exists, to protect them and promote their common welfare, all else is lost. We remain hopeful. Good night.